What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about one of the easiest ways to add a unique and memorable aspect to your music, and that's recording your own sounds, whether that be vocals, instruments, or even Foley and field recordings. Real, organic sounds have this unmistakable character to them that keeps listeners engaged, so that's great. But when we get into recording, there's a lot of nuances and technical challenges that can keep you from getting really professional results. You may also have a limited budget, be totally new to this, or you might be working in a space that just isn't really set up well acoustically. So that's exactly what we're going to cover in this video. I'm going to walk you through some great setups, the types of equipment that I use to record, exactly how to set the equipment up, and some of the best practices to be able to get pro results, even when recording at home in non-ideal recording spaces. Sweet, let's do this. So let's start off with what equipment we'll be using. This won't be a complete deep dive into every imaginable option, but I'll show you some of the gear that I use. I personally play piano and saxophone, but I also bring in vocalists on a lot of my songs, so I've experienced mainly recording those things. The first thing you're going to need is a microphone, obviously, and then the things that go along with it. A mic stand, a shock mount if you're using a condenser mic especially, and maybe a pop filter if you're recording vocals. There's a lot of options for microphones depending on what you're doing, ranging from standard dynamic mics, condensers, lavaliers, ribbon mics, shotgun mics, clip-on style mics for instruments, and even headset style mics, if you're going for that Justin Bieber look. For this video though, we're going to keep things simple and just focus on the common mics that are used for instruments and vocals, and that's dynamic mics and condenser mics. We'll be using a dynamic mic from Electrovoice called the RE20 and a condenser mic from JZ Microphones called the Black Hole 2. So why a dynamic mic? Dynamic mics can be good in environments where you have a lot of ambience, a very live room, or if there's background noise, because they're not very sensitive. And they really pick up just what's right in front of them. They're good at rejecting off-axis noise, which means sounds to the side or behind the microphone. So think about recording in a home space. If you don't have a studio, a dynamic mic might be the way to go. The RE20 is a mic I've used for many years. I use it to record most of my YouTube tutorials. It's used in voiceover work, studio broadcasting, and it's a great instrument mic. If you're on a budget, there's lots of other inexpensive options from companies like Shure and Sennheiser for dynamic mics as well. The main thing to keep in mind with these ones is that they're not very sensitive and they won't pick up a lot of detail. So when you're working with them compared to a condenser, you may find them sounding dull and just lacking in intimacy. So good things to keep in mind when you're selecting your mic. Another consideration with dynamic mics like the RE20 or the Shure SM7B is that they don't have very high output, which means that depending on your preamp, you might need to crank up your gain all the way to the max, and sometimes with the RE20, that's not even enough. So if I'm plugging the mic into my camera, which I do oftentimes to sync audio, then the camera's preamp can't crank high enough to get a good enough level off that mic. So in cases like that, I recommend another piece of kit called a Cloudlifter by Cloud Microphones. And what this does is it's kind of a preamp. It's this little inline box that's powered off of 48 volt phantom power from your audio interface, and it gives you up to 25 decibels of basically clean or noise-free gain. So it just levels up these microphones substantially so you don't have to max out your preamps. The other mic we'll be using is the Black Hole 2 from JZ Microphones. As I'd mentioned earlier, this is a condenser. This particular one is fairly high-end. It's a handmade microphone, and it has a golden capsule. If you're on a budget, there's condensers that are in lower price points, but this is the mic I'm going to be demoing for you guys today. JZ Microphones has hopped on board with us as a sponsor of this video, and what that means is you guys are going to get a chance to win this microphone. We're going to be giving one away. I've dropped a link below the video in the description, so check that out, enter the contest, and best of luck. So a condenser mic compared to a dynamic is going to pick up a ton more detail. That can result in a really juicy sounding recording, but you also are going to pick up all of the room acoustics. You could pick up background noise or somebody fidgeting with a piece of paper, like vocal notes or something. So Again, mic choice. You have to figure out what you're going for, what your environment is, what type of sound you're looking for. Now, the Black Hole 2 is better than some condensers in that it has a pretty focused polar cardioid pattern that's going to pick up mostly what's in front of the microphone. Not as extreme as the RE20, but a little bit more focused than like an omnidirectional condenser. But let's say that you're in a live sounding room, like I have with my piano, for example. So we can hear this room has a lot of ambience in it. There's glass, there's hardwood floors, there's zero acoustic treatment. And we're hearing that in the recording. There is another product that I've just started to use that I am getting great results with by Kaotica Life called the Eyeball. And what this is basically a highly engineered foam ball that sits on top of the mic and covers it 360 degrees, controlling reflections and ambience in the room, and also creating a unique acoustic environment inside the ball. It actually changes the sound of the mic, as you can hear. Other things in the past, like reflection filters or even holding up blankets on mic stands to try and control some of the reflections in the room. But I really like this solution because you can travel with it. And unlike reflection filters that don't control anything about reflections that are coming from behind the performer, above or below the microphone, the Eyeball is 360 degrees and addresses all of that. Okay, so aside from that, you're going to want a good quality XLR cable and some type of audio interface or recording device to be able to capture the audio. Normally, I record into an Apogee Element, which has really, really nice preamps and analog digital converters. But in this case, I'm recording directly into my camera to keep all of our audio in sync. And I'm recording through a Sony K3M audio interface. Now, I do want to say, don't skimp on the XLR cables because cheap XLR cables will break down really fast and then they actually will change the audio, sometimes introducing things like really nasty harmonics. So quality XLR cables only from good solid brands. Awesome. Then the final piece of equipment that you're going to want is a pair of closed back headphones if you're going to be listening to a click or a backing track. In many cases, I am. Open back headphones like you use for mixing or mastering have bleed, right? And that's going to get into your recording. So you want to use a closed back design that's going to minimize the amount of bleed into the mic. So now let's talk about acoustics. And by that, I just mean how the room that you're recording in sounds, the types of materials that are in that room, the size of the room, and how that influences the type of reflections and reverberation that gets captured by the microphone in your recording. To demonstrate, I'm just going to walk you guys through a couple of the rooms that I have access to around the property here and how they sound. So our first room is my control room, my music studio, which has quite a bit of acoustic treatment in it. Then we've got the piano room here, which has glass windows, hardwood floors, drywall with no acoustic treatment, so it's a pretty live and ambient sounding medium-sized room. And we have a yoga studio, big open space, glass windows, hardwood floor, 13-foot ceilings, a massive and open reflective space. Now let's check out how a clap sounds in each one of these spaces. A really key thing as you're getting this set up is the input level that you set your preamp at. There's something called signal to noise ratio. Every recording chain has a noise floor in it. This is just caused by the preamps and in some cases the cabling, and it's a low level hiss that increases as you turn the gain on the preamp up. It's there in every recorded piece of material. And what you want to try and do is maximize the ratio of your recording level to the noise floor so that later in mixing, when it's compressed, you're going to be adding compression to pretty much any recorded sound, and that restricts dynamic range. It reduces dynamic range, meaning the noise floor is going to come up and the louder parts of your recording are going to come down as you reduce dynamic range. So what you want to do is try and maximize that signal to noise ratio so that the noise floor stays as low as possible and doesn't become really obvious in your recording. The way that I do this is I play a test recording in, watching the levels, and then I adjust the gain on the preamp so that the loudest parts of my recording are peaking at about -6 dBFS. That leaves me lots of headroom where it's very unlikely that I'm going to clip the recording. Now that we're all good to go, I'm going to play a song on my sax, and we'll switch between the clips of the different microphones, the different recording spaces, and also using the Kaotica eyeball. Now that you've done your first recording, I would advise that you go back and listen to it and really pay attention to, did you get the signal to noise ratio right? Is there unwanted background noise that's bleeding into your mic? And how's the distance from the mic? Is there anything in the recording chain like low-level line hum or anything going on from a dodgy XLR cable? And make sure that your entire signal chain from the sound source all the way through into the recording is sounding the way you want it. Now you can rinse and repeat. So we've hit on a lot of the big things to be able to get professional sounding results when recording at home. Obviously there's more ground we can cover, like proper mic technique and other recording techniques like using mid-side or stereo matched pairs and stereo recording. And I encourage you guys to keep digging into this and learning. But for now, I hope you got a lot of value out of this video, and we're gonna wrap it up for today. Remember, we are giving away one of these JZ Microphones Black Hole 2 condenser mics, and to enter that, just hit up the link below and it'll take you to the contest page. Cheers guys, catch you in the next video. This is Mao. He doesn't really like saxophones. Tough crowd today.